Okay, let's get the speaker allocations first. OG?
Kathy speaking first, Yanita speaking second.
Okay.
Samo doing both speeches.
Okay. CG?
Peter for speech, Film second speech.
And Seal? Okay. That will be streamed now. I'll do the first slide. Okay. And without further ado, it's time to welcome the Prime Minister for their 7 minutes of constructive here.
Starting in 3, 2, 1. Dear panel, people love sports. And do you know why people love sports? People love sports because they're interesting to them, because they love engaging, they love the thrill of sports, they love the thrill of, is my favorite team going to win, what's going to happen on this match? And this gives people motivation to do sports, to go out there, to be active. 3 things in my speech. First of all, some key framing on how this impacts big clubs, the market, and small clubs. Secondly, how this impacts the quality of sports and how people perceive it. And thirdly, our impacts. Why will people stop engaging with sports or simply engage with sports a lot less? So, without such fairness regulation, how does the sports market look like? Pretty intuitive, dear panel. Big teams have the money, they have the capacity, they have the equipment to be able to offer a lot to the best players out there, but also to invest in the best state-of-the-art equipment. The moment the biggest team in your country or the biggest team internationally can offer $1 billion to a player to have them play for them, this generally inflates the price of players. Why? Because other players who are around the same level, other players who are also that good, wish to be paid the same for their effort, for their time, for their skill in that said sport. What this does is it creates the standard for people to pay a lot for players, but also for people to pay a lot for equipment, to constantly invest in their equipment, in state-of-the-art equipment. What this achieves is 2 main things. First of all, it makes sports a lot less interesting to watch for the average viewer. And secondly, it makes smaller teams significantly less competitive. Actually, starting with smaller teams, because this leads to why sports are less interesting. Now, dear panel, why are smaller teams less competitive without fairness regulation? Pretty intuitive. They cannot afford the best equipment, they cannot afford the best players. The moment one team in your country has the ability to buy every single good player in your country, they will probably do that. They will probably win every match. They probably have the best trainers, and so on and so forth. Yes, opening.
No, never mind. Thanks.
All right, cool. Now, how does this make sports less interesting? Dear panel, notice. The average viewer does not know what is exceptional play and what is just really, really good play. The difference between a really good player and an exceptional player is something you know as a judge of a sport, as a coach of a sport, or as a player of the sport, because you've spent a lot of time training that. You know the specifics, you know the technicalities of a certain sport. I've done ballroom dancing, which is why I know how and when certain steps are properly executed, and when a certain stunt is not done as well as it could have been. To the average viewer, in ballroom dancing, it's just women in pretty dresses and men that spin them around the entire room. The average person, the average sports viewer does not know the technicalities. Football, of basketball, of Formula 1, does not know how an engine works, whatever. Therefore, what happens is when you have one very good team and one team that has all the resources, you probably know the outcome of a certain match, of a certain play. The moment you know the outcome of a play, you're not really interested in watching it. Why? Because a pretty intuitive analogy, just how like finales of reality shows are not really interesting to you the moment you know which girl the Bachelor will pick. Probably a lot less people will tune into the World Cup if they knew which team was going to win the World Cup before it has even started. But secondly, it dissuades people from sports betting. Why is that true? The moment you don't have you don't have the thrill of being right or being wrong, you don't have like immediate benefits from that, and it's also simply not something as interesting to you. But thirdly, there is no emotional investment. Yes, opening.
I would rather if people did less sports betting than currently.
Cool, I don't care about this. The thing about sports betting is it is one of the many factors that make sports generally interesting to people. And on opening government, we believe sports in general has to be a lot more interesting to people, because this is how people sign up their kids to do sport. This is how like their kids dream of being the big player one day and all of those cool stuff. Before that, my next reason. People are not nearly as emotionally invested in the sport that they're watching the moment they know who's going to win. I will not be taking any more questions. Why is this true? Because obviously when you're watching a match and your favorite team is playing, there's the emotional factor of will they win? There's the anxiety of when the other team scores a goal. Then there's the happiness of your favorite team scoring the goal. And these strong emotions are one of the most crucial things that make you attached to a sport. The moment none of those things happen, and you have one team that dominates the entire competition, you know that they're winning, and you know they're winning because they have all the good players, they have all the resources, they have the best coach and all of that. People simply don't want to watch sports. And the thing about the average person and their engagement with sports is the moment they don't watch it, the moment they don't consume all of that, they don't find it as something as valuable, as immediate in their surroundings. They probably do not want to sign up their kids to play football, to play basketball or whatever. The moment they know that their kid cannot dream as big, cannot become the next best thing, they can probably on some sort of rational level recognize that sports has some tangible benefits. The issue with this is the moment you're not passionate about something, and you cannot, dear panel, be passionate when you can intuitively, objectively rationalize that you can never be the best at something, you probably don't want to spend a lot of time doing that. If I knew I was never going to be a good debater, I would have simply never started debating. It's the same about sports. The moment one singular team has been winning for decades, you probably don't a lot less people are probably willing to sign up for sports. But secondly, smaller clubs simply, since they are not competitive, they get a lot less sponsorships, a lot less endorsements. Therefore, they have even less money for like better equipment, for better trainers. This means they cannot afford to train as many kids. They cannot afford for to be as competitive on like junior leagues or whatever, which in general means a lot less people have the incentive to start doing sports. And for all of those reasons, vote opening government.
Thank you very much for this fine speech. Now it's time to welcome the lead of opposition for their 7 minutes of constructive here.
Okay. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Panel, there is a reason why the most watched match in the world is, or at least close to it, is the one between Real Madrid and Barcelona. There's a reason why people like to watch exceptional teams do exceptional things in a game where they're closely matched. We think it's ridiculous to suggest that only one team will have the capability to do so. We think that the games will be much more entertaining if we are able to have games will be much more entertaining if we have a lot of very good teams that are that are able to do so, and we also think that it makes leagues, different sports leagues, get competitive between each other, which means that encourages the game itself getting better and transferring people between different leagues, and each league, be it by geographic or other distinction, trying to be better than the other. This is our argument. Sports will be much more entertaining if we don't pass such a law, if we don't pass such regulations. Okay. A quick point. Okay, just a very quick point of framing prior to that, not even framing, just to address. A lot of people generally watch the game not because they support their local team, but because they want to watch quality play. Think about it. The vast majority, who in Bulgaria watches Bulgarian football? Come on, everyone watches the Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, etc. Any type of sport where the class, where it obviously outclasses. I think the average person is able to make, if not the difference between good and exceptional games, at least between a good and exceptional sports leagues, and they can detect the differences between these teams. Okay. Why will sport be less entertaining in their world? First of all, it is harder for players to transfer. Yes.
I think you're underestimating the bond between players, between people in their local clubs, and how people watch local because they have attachments.
Yeah, but if my sports team sucks, I will root for them, but I will obviously prefer to watch a match where people will play well. Okay. It is harder for players to transfer, meaning leagues basically get complacent with their quality because their standings will always be comparable. Like, there's a limit to how much players can be transferred. So the leagues won't have, so different sports leagues and organizations won't have the incentive to give money to teams so they can afford more transfers, simply because there is a hard limit to how much they can transfer. What does that mean? That means that generally the quality of game won't differ between one league and another. So there will be less of a competition between them, which simply means they will have less of an incentive to keep making the game better and better. There will be less of an incentive to invest more money, since they can get the same viewership rates but while spending less money. They can get the same viewership rates while spending the less money, because they don't need to spend so much on trying to be better than any other league with the team, because they can get complacent with the current funding they have. Yes.
This does not remove incentive for teams to compete, because the only thing that it achieves is, like, sports become less interesting to the viewer. Teams will still compete.
I will explain why that's not the case later. Okay. Basically, leagues will innovate less because they will always be able to have viewers, since they won't differ dramatically with another league. Basically, for example, there won't be a wave of transfers from one country to another, simply because they cannot afford to do that. Which means that simply there won't be much of a difference between how good of a game you can watch in Germany or in England international football leagues, for example, which means that generally they won't have the incentive to invest so much. No, I won't be baited into more POIs. Come on now. Okay. What does that mean? In practice? That means that every league will be full of okay teams with a mix of good and bad players who make the games, sure, competitive, but if there is no difference in quality, then no one game will be able to attract more attention, which also hurts the sports betting industry, because it won't be able to cope with so many games of similar quality, which means that there won't be such a draw to the big game, and only people who are invested in their local teams will bet on it, which hurts their chances, because they're more likely to be irrational in how they bet, because they will root for their own team. So I think the point on sports betting falls. Okay. But what does that mean in general? There will be less money in sports because now leagues can turn a profit while doing what they have kept doing for decades, without innovating, simply because they don't have such a need to draw in money, because they will always get the same quality of games anyways. Secondly, so this means that sports will be less exciting to watch, simply because it will be less. There will be. Simply because the quality of the game suffers, because it's more likely that and it's more likely that teams won't be able to claw themselves out of failure because they can't have a lot of investment, which means that they cannot have a lot of transfer that renews their team. For example, which also hurts small teams because a team can only be revived with money, no matter whether there is a limit or not. Like Litex Lovech was only good because it was only good because tens of millions of levels were dumped in it. Same goes for Ludogorets. There will be less comeback stories for small local teams because there is less they can do with the money they have. What this means is that there will be less of a consensus on what is good and what is bad in sports, and there will be just games where people root for their local teams and they don't and there is nothing to strive for. There is no upper echelon of sports that your child can strive to so they become a better footballer, because your child does not want to be like their local. Even if they're from Varna, they don't want to be like the central midfielder from Spartak Varna. They want to be like Ronaldo or Messi. So that point from them falls as well. Okay. I think that's it.
Thank you very much for this fine speech. Now it's time to welcome the Deputy Prime Minister for their 7 minutes of constructive here.
Second. Okay, it's like this, goes here. Okay. Okay, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. Dear panel, there is one very similar thing between art and sports. The thing about them is they only exist in culture. They exist in a vacuum, and that vacuum is a cultural vacuum. They have no practical benefit. Like maybe sports is like beneficial for your like overall health, but they do not like contribute any like major economic factor or something like this. So the most important thing about sports is that they're first of all accessible and that they're second of all entertaining. Both of these things, art and sport, they exist to make people happy and to bring people joy and to make them passionate about them. So as long as we prove that on their side of the house, sport will be one, more inaccessible, and second, less entertaining, we should objectively win this debate. And like, how do we do that? We do that in like two ways. First of all, we give you like the market analysis on the way that like smaller teams will not be able to compete and they will get less and less funding. Like the moment that your matches aren't being watched because there are teams that are so disproportionately better than you, how Sava already analyzed for you, because those matches are like so much better and so much more entertaining, that's the moment you don't have viewership, you don't have investment. Second of all, Kati told you, like, you're gonna inflate the market. If like you're buying Mbappe for 7 times the price of a normal footballer, but Mbappe cannot be 7 times better than the normal footballer, which means that you have to raise the prices of other footballers. Yes, I'm stealing your analysis, Marincho. Yes, I am. Okay, so you like other footballers and other clubs have to raise their prices proportionately. Otherwise, you just break the footballer market and like you go into like chaos and nothing starts making sense. So that means that smaller teams have less capacity to buy like better players or buy better trainers because they're already like bought out from other teams that are already willing to offer more money and such and stuff like this. And the second point is like equipment and the way that this works. Okay, second point: the moment that sports are less entertaining, like
trickle-down economics disproportionately fucks up smaller teams. Like that's the thing. When you get less viewership, you're first of all screwed on like the money point where you can't invest in your team to make it better, and then you're secondarily screwed up on the entertainment point where you're already bad, so you get disproportionately worse the less and less people are interested in sports, because we can say like maybe only the bigger teams will have some sort of safety net against this or something. So like what do we get from like opening opposition here? They tell us, oh, you can tell exceptionality. No, I cannot. I only know that this is the Premier League because people have told me this is the Premier League. Like, I enjoy this because in my head I have the knowledge that I am supposed to enjoy this, and this is better than other things because that is the social narrative. Like, objectively, I cannot be able to tell as an average person how good the angle a person hits a ball is, or like, and this exists like on a spectrum, but the place where there is less difference is like whether you're good or whether you're exceptional. Like, that's the margin that is very hard to distinguish from the normal person, because they do not have a lot of like spec knowledge on the sport. They do not understand what it's like to like experience it and do all those like technical things. For example, when I was new to debate, I was willing to be impressed by just everybody who could spend like 7 minutes talking coherently, and that to me made no difference to somebody who was mechanizing really well, because I was just impressed by the things that were easier for me to comprehend. And that's the same analogy with sports. Like, a lot of sports fans do not know the technicalities because those are very that information is like very, very exclusive and things like this. Okay, what Sava says, okay, this will mess up leagues and this will be very bad for sports. Notice, panel, first of all, leagues are breakable. They're like debates. You need to break on the lower league in order for you to get to the upper league. So if you want to play at like the highest cup, you have to classify for the lower cup or something like this. Or like, that's how I understand it. For example, for like Bulgaria to go to the world championship of some kind of sport, we have to do well for the qualifications so we can get to that like level. So we can already assume that those teams are like justifiably on some skill level better, and they're more worth it. So this will not majorly like mess up like competitions between leagues and things such as that. There will be one league that is seen from societies like as like better, and people will still try to like transfer. Okay, that way.
Okay, what is the difference between that and on the team level as well? Like, what is the difference between that being the case for a league and that being the case for a team?
I don't understand your question. I'm really sorry. Like, I genuinely do not understand what you mean. Okay. A team can like Sava says a bunch of things. He says like a team can only be revived with money. Like, a small team can only be revived with money. Notice, panel, the difference, the delta here is there are 2 or 3 teams that can be owned by Saudi Arabia. Those are the teams that we are particularly trying to mitigate. Those are the teams that have disproportionately more power on the sports market, that have more power to invest in merchandise, that have like more capacity to like buff their player, like get the best transfers and things such as that. Those are the people that we're trying to mitigate. The people that have like a standard, like the standardized amount of funding can spend that however they like. It's very reasonable to assume that the framing of this debate will be the fact that like teams will be given like enough funding for them to function properly. We'll just be mitigating those that are kind of breaking the sports market. Then Sava says leagues can turn a profit without without being competitive or something, but then sports will become less interesting to watch. That's a direct backstop. I don't know. I don't understand how leagues can have a secure profit while like sports is getting more interesting to watch and things like that. A second argument from like opening government, technological innovation actually sits on our side. Notice, panel, when all teams have the same amount of funding, you have to be more creative about how you spend that funding, because you still have to be competitive on the market. Like, you're still battling for views. So if Ferrari has the same amount of money as Lamborghini, they will both try to like invest that money into the better engine, so they'll have to find more creative solutions. Like, the easy analogy for that is If I have $1,000 and you have $1,000, the one of us which is the better investor in stocks is gonna be making the million, and I'm not gonna be making the million. That's the analysis. You just have to be better at it. You have to be more innovative. You have to get yourself out of the situation. Impact, very simple. Better sports, better community. People are more engaged. Kids get better opportunities to play. Please vote Team Opening Government.
Thank you very much for this fine speech. And it's time to close the talk with the deputy leader of opposition. Here.
Okay, starting in 3, 2, 1. Sure, we can buy the teams who have the incentive to be more the incentive to be more technologically innovative, to do more to do different stuff, etc. But they won't have the capacity simply because they won't have the overwhelming amount of funding. Like there are sorts of with passing time, you need more and more money to be able to invest in better things and to create better things. Like realistically, a team 20 years ago needs less amount of creativity, a smaller amount of money to be able to make an innovation that changes how the game works. Nowadays that is different. What you do essentially is put a brake on development simply because there is an upper limit of how much money you can invest in something, which means that there is an upper limit to how much you can improve it. What does that mean? That means that essentially you will stop innovation in sports because some point will be passed at which you won't be able this money you have as a hard limit won't be enough to realistically make different breakthroughs in sports. And these breakthroughs actually trickle down simply because as they get more widespread, they get more effective, they get more widespread, they get cheaper to implement, they get more popular, and they're needed in the method. Which means that essentially the clash here is whether there should be essentially the delta here is that here we have progress in sports. With you, we don't have any progress in sports. Okay, so for example, to answer the analogy they gave with Ferrari, I think in Formula 1, realistically, if you have $50 million for an engine, you're not going to be able to improve it. You won't be able to research how to improve it drastically. And if you did, in the counterfactual, if you did permit to do that, that would mean that these innovations will later trickle down to the game, which makes the cars faster, which makes the game which make the games all the more exciting, because that is why they seek it. Like this, yes.
If I don't know faster cars are possible and exist, I'll be fine with how fast the cars are right now because I don't drive a very fast car.
Okay, but sorry, can you repeat it? I'm sorry.
If I don't know that cars can go any faster, I will be satisfied at the speed that they're going through right now. We don't need this sport innovation in the way that you're saying.
I think there is a need for innovation because otherwise sports get stale as different teams, as the meta gets the same. Like the different why sports changes is because there are rules changes and there are changes in what technology is used, which means there is changes in how the game works. Whenever there is a lack of these changes, that means that the game gets more stale and more predictable with time. Like you're talking about how games will be less predictable because teams will do such and such, but as time passes and less is done within sports, that means that less is done with it. That means that there are less changes and less things for a team to keep track on because they get more experience with time, which means that they are more able to have, which means they're much more able to have. Which means they're much more able to focus on which means they're much better able to just keep on what they're doing, what has been proven as the best approach, which means that games will get much staler, less entertaining because they will keep doing the same thing. Like For example, if you forgo giving new regulations to, if you don't limit the funding of players, that means teams can experiment much more with different strategies through getting different players with different skill sets which they need transfers for, which means that these combinations can bring out something new in the game. Like a team gets attention not only because they do realistically because they do well, but also because they do something no other team has done before, which means that this innovation will bring them which means that that such team will bring I'm sorry. Okay. The bottom line is less money for teams means they can do less stuff. The less stuff they can do means they have a smaller incentive to experiment. The smaller incentive to experiment they have, the less innovations there are in sport. The less innovations there are in sport, the less new and exciting approaches are tried in sports, which makes the sport less exciting in and of itself. Additionally, the less money there is and the less innovation there is, that also means that strategy gets the same after a while, as I said. Which means that with time, sports team gets metrical in their approaches to play. There is less of an incentive to try something new, which contributes to the impact that it makes sports less entertaining. I don't know what I am saying. I won't Iron Man ever again. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this fine speech. Now it's time to welcome the member of government to start the closing bench. Here.
Three, two, one. Firstly, my name is Peter. But dear panel, what everybody in this debate so far has missed is the real true essence of sports. Dear panel, you don't watch sports just because you want to see the very best and the peak of human performance. You watch them because you have some sort of personal attachment to the people who play in sports. This is the most important thing in this debate. Why do, for example, let's say there is a match in the World Cup between Bulgaria and France. You don't automatically root for France just because they're better and you want to watch Mbappe make rainbow flicks and score 10 goals. You're rooting for Bulgaria because you're proud of your country and want them to win. You love these players from the bottom of your heart and want them to succeed. And it would absolutely crush your soul to know that they have no chance just because they don't have the budget of big countries or big clubs. Okay, so I'll start with our first unique argument, which is so many people will stop watching or at least stop enjoying watching sports. And people's enjoyment of sports is the most important thing in this debate. It hasn't been a minute and I'll take questions a bit later. Problem. So many people support clubs due to personal attachment, incentive. Mechanism 1, nostalgia. Maybe the team is somehow linked to your childhood. Maybe you went to their academy when you were a kid. Mechanism 2, national pride. You watch and support clubs from towns/countries that you're from because you feel a sense of pride and you feel a sense of connectedness. You have no incentive to support big clubs on the same level that you would a local club because they're just some abstract concepts somewhere out there. They're like this Goliath that, it can be slain, but you have nothing to do with them. You have no reason to root for them. Mechanism 3, people enjoy being different and take pride in it. People enjoy saying, oh yes, I am not like you, I support this team, I like, being different from you. Mechanism 4, family connections. Maybe your grandpa was a fan of Slavia, and that's why you only watch Slavia. It reminds you of him. There is a reason people are fans of bottom division clubs. It's because of legacy, and it's because of it's because of legacy basically. Why is this so important? The true essence of sports isn't watching the very best. If we wanted to watch the peak of human performance, we would just make every athlete take 10 tons of steroids just to make them even stronger. Yes?
Why not?
Why not? Well, because it's detrimental to the health of every single athlete, and it is also bad because it ruins the essence of the sport. It also disincentivizes people to actually participate in sports, and it's just it's completely useless. It's like cheating and saying, well, why not cheat? It makes you better. No, it doesn't. Okay. Solution: with regulations, teams are preserved. Mechanism 1, fairness. When the playing field is more even, there is even the slightest chance that the bottom league team will beat the top one based out of pure luck, for example, or based out of sheer training, because let's say the big team has got on their egos and say, oh, we're the best, nobody can beat us, and the little team has been training every single day, every hour of the day, and they have miraculously beat them. This wouldn't be possible if the big team had some sort of technology that the little team just doesn't have access to. What are the impacts of this? People are happy from sports. People's enjoyment in watching sports and their part of culture is detrimental. And if we remove that, sports are essentially just the next capitalistic, dopamine-based cash grab that everything else in our society has become. Sports are one of the last bastions of true human the true human essence that we have left in our society, and removing fairness from them will just make them so corporate, and will completely lose the why we started doing sports in the first place. This will also inspire people to do sports because they see that their local club has meaning. This means that a lot more people will do sports in general. Second argument: once big clubs have a monopoly on sports and there are no regulations, this incentivizes both big and small clubs to cheat and cut corners. Wow. Problem: when the big teams have a monopoly, people just assume they're the best and they can get away with things. Illustration: let's say Real Madrid and Barcelona are the very best very best clubs, and nobody else, even, I can't take more questions, even has a chance to get on their little finger. So they both just make their players take steroids, and nobody even questions it or tries to, have any sort of regulation on it, because, everybody just expects them to be the very best anyway. Nobody suspects this huge gap because it's already there, and they're just increasing it, and people don't notice. Incentive mechanism 1, better quality. Fans expect the sport to improve, After all, mechanism 2, winning. Big teams, of course, want to win, and therefore will do anything in their power to do so. Mechanism 3, lack of suspicion. As I already said, people already assume that these are the very best teams and that no one has a chance to rival them. Sorry, Sava, I can't. And so this means that they can cut corners in all sorts of ways. For example, they can have, special soles in their shoes that preserve energy and make them faster. Nobody will suspect it. They'll just say, oh, well, they're the fastest people alive. Of course they're this fast. And this will just mean that sports degrades to cheating for the sake of getting money. And this completely ruins the essence of sports, as with the first argument. Solution: having regulations stop cheating completely. Constant checks due to the competitive nature of the sport. When you have a lot of clubs competing, and when you just have one behemoth that completely, desolates everything else, people will get suspicious, but when you have a few giants that nobody ever even rivals, and they just clash with each other, nobody will assume that anything is out of the ordinary. What are the impacts of this? Health of players. They don't have to take steroids to get, a bit better. They can live after the age of 50 and not die of kidney failure. More entertaining sports, prestige in sports, which is very important because without prestige, why even do sports in the first place? Sports are not a cash grab, and history of clubs is preserved. Votes.
Thank you very much for this fine speech. Now it's time to introduce the member of opposition for their 7 minutes of constructive. Here.
Panel, I'll be honest, opening opposition really confused us. Why? Because they do say some buzzwords. They say, oh, less investment, less innovation, sports is less exciting, but they never really prove any of this. They're more like saying things like, well, investment will be less because there is less money by the motion, things like that. What we are going to do as an extension is actually analyze some of these things, but it's not an analysis extension, I promise. It is much more, because we will explain to you how sports is more likely to advance and change and evolve over time, because when these things don't exist. But before that, a quick piece of analysis. Why will competition always exist? Notice that this engages with opening government directly. Firstly, there is self-regulation. Even the best team wants to be watched. Therefore, if the sport actually becomes boring, even the best team will lose, right? It's not beneficial even for the best team when nobody watches it. Therefore, even the best team has the incentive to actually improve equipment, like build big stadiums where they invite other like teams to play, things like that. But also maybe even like fund other smaller teams. I don't know, maybe buy them and find a way like to help them, things like that, because they want to be watched. But secondly, 2 teams are enough to make the game interesting, and this is not a monopoly once you have 2 teams, right? Now notice that this means that the game is now not predictable because there are 2 teams, right? Now, why would there be 2 teams though? Firstly, naturally, for games, you almost always need more than 1 team. So I guess Monopoly cannot exist at the point of which for a match you need to have 2 teams and these 2 teams will be part of the game. Firstly, but notice that the second team, that is like the second top team, won't be much worse than the actual very best team. Why? Because now they have to advance in order to meet the level of the very best team, because they don't want to lose by a large margin, right? This is why they have the incentive to actually improve further. Firstly, but secondly, notice there's always the possibility for one big team to break into 2 smaller because of a conflict, because of, I don't know, like between managers, things like that. This is something that is happening in sports quite often, so I think that this is a very likely scenario. But the bottom line of all of this is that there won't be monopoly in sports. That's it. Now, why? Notice something important now to the extension. Sport is bound to become less interesting increasingly, or at least stay on the same actual level of excitement for people that watch it. Now, for any economic impact of sports, for any positive impact on mentality of fans and players, for fans to watch the game, sport has to be interesting, and we think that this is logically prior to any other benefit in this debate. This is why we should win when we prove to you that this is more likely on our side. 5th minute. Okay, now notice that we want sports to develop and change. Why? Because we want new rules in games, we want new ideas, we want more progressive ideas in sports. Because notice that the world would have been extremely boring if sport hasn't evolved since ancient times, for example, and we were still doing the games in the same way that they used to do it, right? Now, what do we do in this speech? Propose an alternative that is not just the status quo, and explain how we progressively managed to make sport much more interesting, which directly clashes with opening government's impact. Now, what is the extension exactly though? Firstly, why does sport not advance on their side of the house? Firstly, notice that there are those fairness regulations that are actually dealt in this debate. This leads to many teams that are kind of mid and have limited resources. Notice that opening government agrees with this. They don't have to prove it. I'm taking them at their best. Now, what does this mean though? It means that basically you have like a lot of teams that have less resources to do much, right? They cannot really like make a change in sport because sport is sufficiently like working well. Yeah, like you have some teams that are doing kind of the same thing all the time. But secondly, sport has no incentive to change either, at the point of which it just works, right? Now, what happens on our side? Why is it so different? Notice that there is sure one, maybe 2 or 3 best teams that have more resources. We buy that. We're again taking a government badge on their best. Notice what does this mean though? This is this allows sport to actually adapt according to the dominance of these teams that are always on top, in order to allow the new teams to actually change and actually manage to become part of sport, to actually make it again competitive, because it is in the incentive to every single team in sports to make the game competitive, right? This is like the fundamental idea of this whole argument. But what we mean here, notice that big teams want new teams to emerge because of self-preservation, and this is the way that the whole thing regulates itself. Now, this happens only when big teams exist, which is obviously only on our side of the house. This is why it's unique. Firstly, notice that such big teams are the only ones that actually, small teams are the only ones that train the future best players. It's not that big teams that do it, they're the ones that buy them. So they want small teams to exist because those are the people that will train the new players. First reason. But second reason, this is how sport is exciting. I already explained to you why this is important to this actor. And thirdly, the Premium League means something only if there's a lower level of the sport. If I'm on the top of the Premium League, I want to make sure that there's like some mid-league and lower league in order for me to seem like I'm on top of everything, because otherwise it means absolutely nothing. Yes, opening.
Having 2 to 3 best well-funded teams and 10 poorer ones with less resources means that your games, like 9 out of 10, are still boring to watch. Your smaller teams are getting smaller. You need competitiveness in the whole level of your league to make sports interesting.
No, this is why I gave you the analysis at the beginning. There won't be a monopoly of this one team. There will be like 2 teams, maybe 3 teams. I don't care how many there are, at the point of which there is game of 2 kind of close teams that are making the game interesting. And notice also something important. The fans that are watching are not watching the game for the outcome, dear panel. Even if I know which team is going to win. You know why? Because notice that it's about the process. It's about the game itself. It's about me watching my favorite player do something. It's about me watching them grow and improve, or recovering from sort of some surgery or something. Because notice, if this was true, as opening Gov are saying, people wouldn't stay and watch 90 minutes of like men running around a ball. No, they will just wait and actually Google it and see who actually won the game. This is not what's happening. This is why people are actually watching for the process and for the enjoyment and for the socializing around the games. So I think this is like a sufficient explanation. Now, what is also additional point? Small teams can change sport in accordance to the advantage of the biggest clubs. It looks like addition to new rules in sport that apply only for like the biggest teams. Like, I don't know, maybe I don't know, like some sort of limitations. Examples in second speech you hear. This is our alternative, this is what we propose. But secondly, like better equipment, they can actually start to developing things because they now have to actually change the margin between them and the best teams, which is why they're likely to like find new technological ways to increase the performance of their own players. And this is something that will change the game. It won't change the game when all of the players and all of the teams are mid. This is why there will be no innovation on the other side. And we think that innovation of sport is much more important than anything else in this debate. Vote for us.
Thank you very much for this fine speech. And now it's time to close the government side with government whip. Here, here.
Three, two, one. Dear panel, we are going to win this debate by comparing our worlds, proving that only the government has the correct solution that won't kill all sports, which is the alternative, which I'm going to prove in just a second. And we are also going to say why we are better than our opening, so that vote for us. Okay, so illustration. How this is okay. So nobody from the opposition seems to be able to mention that without fair competitions, without fairness rules, as they said, technologies, so on, exist. For example, the Olympic Games, they have the best player in the whole country combined. If, for example, LeBron James, doesn't matter from which other teams he is, he's going to be there. Steph Curry is going to be there. It doesn't matter from what team they are. This is the example of the system that they're trying to implement. And so it already exists. And the only fairness regulations that they have are the ones that directly prevent harm from the player. For example, no doping and so on. Drugs and steroids. So what does it work in the Olympic Games? Because it happens only one of the time. Nobody wants to see these big numbers without them having the chance for the smaller ones. And it works because it's one every 4 years. If you had an Olympic Games every couple of weeks, just as they are trying to implement basically, nobody would watch them because their significance of the top of the world is not longer viable. I'm not taking scam questions. Okay, so this is the direct rebuttal towards opening government. Opening opposition. People don't care for the next level. They have never seen the next level. They don't, because it's not implemented currently, they don't know what it is. For example, football. Nobody is going to know the next level because nobody knows the technologies that are implemented. The only thing that they can rely on are some football animes that give the people superpower. And nobody's going to take that seriously. So the people don't care for a better sport, they only care about having fun. They only care about their local team, as my previous said, they only care for the competition. Why do they care about this? Because this is what makes sports interesting. The entire industry relies on that. Okay, so what's the main problem with both cases of the opposition? The division between smaller and bigger teams is going to change drastically. Now, what's the status quo? There is still a division. There is still a difference between Dunav Ruse and Levski Sofia. But the gap is manageable because they're middle ground. They're second leagues, they're third leagues, so people can cross over. But when we implement this unlimited wealth to be able to be poured into the better teams, the gap bridges. There's no longer a thing that bridges the gap. It just disappears and they won't be able to progress. How is that? When the top team has a technology, for example, we say today they get a new training program that increases everything. This because the smaller team has less money, it will take longer for them to implement. And because the other team has unlimited wealth, by the time that the smaller team has implemented the first invention that gives them an equal ground, the top team will already skyrocket high. So essentially, unless some magical force pours billions into the smaller team, they will no longer be able to compete. There will no longer be this effort of, I'm not taking any questions. They will no longer be able to compete. People will no longer care. Okay, so why would sports go stale after this? This is the main analysis. Because when we already said the smaller teams are no longer viable. So essentially what it means that only the top football teams, for example, will be playing. Now, why will sports go stale? First of all, people don't see their local clubs. They don't have a personal attachment to most of these bigger clubs. For example, Bulgaria is not going to be one of them. Why would Bulgarians watch it? So this excludes every person who is not personally affected by this club, which is a lot of the for example, football community, because the sport is international, so people will go stale. Also, without having seen the same clash between two people over and over and over again, it's just like the Hangover movie. The fourth time is not really that fun. We don't know what's going to happen, but still, nobody really cares about that. It's obvious that one of them is going to win, one of them is going to lose. They're going to do the same thing the next week. It's incentive that it will get boring. So what are some impacts that I'm going to expand? According to the new rulebook, I can mechanize in second speech. So here, mechanism showing my true essence of sport is importance. Mechanism 1, if viewers are unsatisfied, they will stop watching and overwin because their favorite teams don't. Relaxation, one of the essence of sport is lost. Sports become basically a corporate jobs. Okay, I'm not going to finish that. So comparison, why do we go over the opposition? Because in our world, sports ceases to exist. The thing that makes sports fun is competitiveness. And when we only have competitors because some people that we can't really relate to, we don't want to watch this, we don't take interest in, no Sava, we don't take interest in it, we just don't care about that. So essentially in our world is the only world where sports can continue to be in the same version that we see today. And why is the same version we see today good? Because we see smaller teams, we see rise up stories, we see false stories. People get emotionally attached to the sport. The sport makes more and more and more money. But at the top level, nobody's going to watch the game. Yeah, we lose the human attachment towards these people. Because how can you relate to some mutant 6'4" buff guy? You just don't have interest in the sport. That's not possible. You know that you're never going to reach it. You just don't care. And why do we move above opening government? Because, yeah, they set the groundwork for what we are saying, but we are making more constructive material. We are giving clear examples. I don't remember what they said. Yeah, they essentially said people love sports, they're going to be influential. No, we affect the sport as a whole. The whole community, everybody who does sports is affected by our case. Vote for us.
Thank you very much for this fine speech. And now it's time to welcome the opposition whip to close the debate. Here.
Panel, what you're going to hear in my speech is firstly what exactly is our argument. Then I'm going to have impacts, which I think is very important, given that no one else in this room has any impact at all. I'm going to explain how the motion affects every single one of the actors affected by the motion. Then I'm going to have quick rebuttal and weighing with government badge, because I think they have one case overall. I'm not sure if they do analysis extension or they're a derivative. Okay, so an illustration of our case. How does this look like? We're going to impose a certain rule, for example, when a smaller team plays with a bigger team, the game is going to be set on the field of the smaller team. I think that's our alternative, and this rule is why is it just as beneficial as the other thing? Two reasons here. Firstly, notice how the smaller team feels way more comfortable because it plays on their team, right? So they're likely to perform better simply because they know they're playing on their ground. But second of all, it generates the revenue for the smaller team, and it doesn't harm the bigger team anyhow, because it already has that revenue. So it's not necessary for it. It basically doesn't lose a thing. Okay, now impacts of the argument. So we say innovation. Now, how does it affect? Firstly, the audience, AI. The fans of the club. Firstly, it's something new, it's unexpected, and it's entertaining. Second of all, it is better because notice it wouldn't be implemented if it wasn't better. If it's not something that works, which means that people are happy. But notice, they do not lose the personal connection with the team that CG is trying to prove to you that they lose, because the only thing is that the Wacom team gets bigger ability to sell merchandise, and now I'm going to feel way more connected to the club because I can already have a cup with the photo of the team at my house, and therefore I will feel more connected to the team. I'm going to take questions from POIs after 5 minutes. But second of all, how does it affect the sports people? They get more more money because and this is going to be explained later with engagement with OG and the trickle down economics argument with players cost more and whatever. So by signing a contract, Yanni says, players are going to cost more, but she says that's bad. Why? Because then it's going to be harder for other teams to buy new players. However, notice how when the price of players increases, this means that I can sell a player and I'm going to earn way more money, which I think is intuitively good because it's like a easier way for me to earn money to invest in certain things like merchandise, which is very important, or better equipment like fixing the holes in our field, or like a better trainer who is going to teach me some new amazing strategy that like another team has. And like increasing and also my players are going to feel better because now they know that their net worth is like way bigger than they used to be, so they feel like they have progressed already. Even if you have only that one team that has enough like so many money, like is sponsored by Saudi Arabia or I don't care. And also I simply feel like I have changed, I feel like I've learned new things and whatever. I feel more successful because I'm playing with better teams. I'm playing literally with like taking the best case of government. It's small teams playing against big teams. When a small team is playing against a big team and I feel like I have deserved like it's for example me being a novice debater and debating from someone like Nikki and Rumen, I will feel like I was like worth enough, I was good enough to be like to have the I don't know I was good enough to deserve to debate against them. I feel like that's like a very good thing because I was like I have progressed enough. But like the third actor affected is like clubs, and clubs give like basically they have more money to invest. I already explained why, because the worth of their players is like higher. Therefore, when they sell a player, they're more likely to train new players, for example, or like invest in better equipment, as I already explained, and they do not lose the fan base because now they simply have more money to sell merchandise. I think that's when we take OGs. Now, competitive with what we hear from we don't really understand. Samo says, less monetary supply. We give you like 3 constructive reasons why we have so many, we give you different analysis first of all, and second of all, we give you the impacts. Impacts are very important for weighing. Sava doesn't provide you with a weighing, therefore you're not really sure to the point that if O or OG gets the debate in top half. When we give you that, we go over him simply because of judge manual. That's the way it works. Now, engagement with CG. They say, there's like a lot of personal attachment with sports, like nostalgia, whatever, but how does that affect sports? I don't see. They say, you're not going to root for France because you're not from France, but you probably watched some documentary movie when you were 10 about Ronaldo, and you're going to feel attached because he was your favorite player ever since you were 10. Therefore, you have the personal attachment not only to the local team, you have personal attachment to other players as well. Okay, I'm going to take from all.
Dear panel, the only thing they prove to you is it's not gonna be a monopoly. Yes, it's gonna be an oligopoly. Oligopoly is still bad for smaller companies, aka teams, and it's still bad for market competition.
Even if it is an oligopoly, we still have higher monetary supplies for clubs, which comes from your speech. Therefore, you cannot rebut it in a POI. It's like a backstop. And even if we have that oligopoly, notice how there is the matchmaking mechanism towards AI. Smaller teams are going to play with other smaller teams. Therefore, they have the same success rate. Therefore, they're not going to be harmed by the reputation because they constantly fall, for example, for bigger teams. And those 3 bigger teams are going to have to compete with each other. Therefore, they're still going to create a very pleasant and entertaining games for the people for the average guys who don't understand how the game works. I think that's very intuitive and that's very important. And to the point at which we don't have one team that's so rich, you can't. It's 6 minutes and a half. So it means that there is still going to be a very entertaining game, and people are not going to lose their fan base or whatever. Now, okay, I already explained why it's not a monopoly. They say, smaller teams have less capacity to
buy new players. I already explained why that's not bad, and why actually the higher prices of players provide clubs with more opportunities to progress and to develop. And also, they're probably, if they cannot buy new players, they're going to invest in training new players, which is also bad because we achieve the point about kids being trained better on their side that they claim to have. And second of all, they say, oh, same amount of money, have to be more creative to create new technologies, and we take the innovation point. That's complete meme. I have to explain. The delta is in the ability to create this change. If I could create the change with 10 level, I probably would, because I still have the incentive to save money. For all those reasons, I think it's right to vote for closing opposition.
Thank you very much for this fine speech. Now go, hug, shake your hands. We are going to stop the stream right now.
Добър дебат, никога повече не